Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we started recording episodes virtually instead of being in the same room together. This created technical issues for us for many weeks. Our sound issues get better beginning with the pros and cons episode. In the meantime, we appreciate your patience with the sound issues that are present in this episode. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hi, guys!
Hello, everybody!
Woohoo! Kate, you sound so good.
Yay! Alright, so for those of you listening at home or wherever you are, I had bought a new headset for this to be all so much better and fancy, and then it turns out I had not set it up so that it was actually receiving through the microphone of the headset. It was still receiving through the microphones in the laptop, and I didn't know.
We are therapists. Technology is not our thing.
That's true.
That's my excuse.
I would be doing a role-playing game online and have a friend in Australia walk me through it.
Yes. Yay for friends in Australia during role-playing games. That helps.
I know. They're like, we can't hear you very well. Do this, and this, and this. I'm like, okay.
Ta-da!
Still can't remember what any of it was, so I couldn't repeat it if I wanted to.
But it seems to be working really good.
Tech people. It's true. Yay! Anyway, here we are.
Here we are. Yeah. So we're going to do a Q&A episode today. And first thing that I guess probably first and only, I don't know if I have too much else to say before we get into it. You guys have done a few of these with us now. A lot of the things we're doing on the Q&A episode today actually are posts from our Facebook group. We've had a lot of people posting in our Facebook group recently, asking us various questions. So we try to do a good job, either one or both of us responding to people's posts within 24 hours of when they post them to give some direct advice, suggestions, feedback right away. But we're going to read some of them on this episode as well because we think it could be good stuff for everyone to hear. So it's a combo of emails, Facebook posts, all good things. So.
And of course, because we're doing a Q&A episode, by necessity, we will receive an email this afternoon.
Yeah, probably. This seems to keep happening, right? Like with this first email that Kate's going to read, we got it like 3 hours after we finished recording, and we're like, we'll get to this next time, thanks. So that's probably what will just wind up happening.
Right? I feel like this is becoming a theme. I'm pretty sure it happened the first time.
Yes, it seems like
shall
it.
We?
Yes.
Are you doing the thing?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. So, hello! First of all, thank you for your awesome podcast. Love listening to you both on my rides to and from work. I've learned so much. My thing is that I've learned so much that it has helped. Oh no, why can't I read today? My thing is that I've learned so much that has helped me that I want to help others. There we go, Kate. Most of all, I want to teach mindfulness skills to my 5-year-old sister. Both my brother and I have suffered from anxiety. My anxiety more mild and my brother's much more severe. And so I see my 5-year-old sister not knowing how to handle emotions or just acting out in situations that really aren't that serious. I know she's 5 and of course kids throw tantrums. But I just want to know if you guys think teaching her mindfulness at a young age will help her. I don't want her to grow up and let her anxiety run her life like it did for me and my brother for so long. Would you suggest these same skills, or do you think she's too young to understand? When things don't go her way, she completely shuts down and literally curls up in a ball and falls to the ground and cries. Or I honestly see her with some not so good behaviors to get what she wants or to get back at you for not getting what she wants. Like if you play a game and she loses, she'll throw something at you and then be, oh, whoops, sorry. I just want to help her understand her feelings and emotions and teach her how to react and not react in certain situations. I'm 23 years old and so don't live with her, but I visit at least one time a month and we FaceTime often. Should I search for mindfulness for toddlers, or can I try and explain these DBT skills in short terms for her to understand? Thank you for taking time to read this lengthy email, and I look forward to your advice.
Yeah, I really like this question because even though in this situation, the listener is asking questions about how to help her younger sister, I feel like this is great stuff for parents to think about, for teachers to think about, anyone who has, what was that, Kate?
I just totally.
Yeah, like anyone who has interactions with children. Like, this is a great question to ask. And I guess the long and short of it that I would say is that I do think that DBT skills are too complex for a child of her age. I've heard DBT skills being taught to kids like as young as 11 or 12. But anyone younger than that, if you teach DBT skills to them, like how Kate and I talk about it in the podcast, it's probably going to be a little bit too much. Yeah, it's going to be too complicated. So yeah, DBT might be a bit much, but in terms of this general idea of mindfulness that we talk about regularly, I don't feel like anyone is too young to start learning mindfulness in an age-appropriate way. So I think that's mainly what we're going to talk about with answering your questions. Like, yeah, how can you teach some mindfulness? And one thing that I'm a big fan of with kids that's a good mindfulness exercise is for them to blow bubbles, because that encourages them to do some breathing when they blow out the bubbles. And also, for a lot of kids, bubbles are pretty all-consuming. Like, they want to run around and pop the bubbles, and they're very distracting. You know, they want to see how much they get. So it's something that really can take up the kids' full attention and helps them with some breathing in a way that's kind of like not a formal, let's sit down and breathe together kind of a thing. It makes it fun. So that could be a good way to help kids with calming down. I'm also a big fan too, which maybe for this listener, because, you don't live with your 5-year-old sister, but maybe something that could be helpful, again, like for parents and things like that. I really like the idea of a calm down corner. And a lot of times, when kids are getting really dysregulated, the first instinct is like, let's put them in timeout. But the purpose of timeout is to really help kids calm down. And there can be a way to maybe do that in a way that's less shaming. Like a calm down corner can be used for anything. A calm down corner can be used when a child is feeling sad or when a child is tired, not just when a child is like misbehaving or being quote unquote bad. But in the calm down corner, you can put things like a blanket, some books to read, some of like the self-soothing stuff that Kate and I talked about a couple episodes back. If there are smells that your child really likes, figuring out how to like maybe incorporate those. Just things that are going to be soothing and not stimulating. So that they can help
stimulating, right? Not exciting.
Exactly, yeah. So they can help calm the child down. And then if the child's getting dysregulated, you can suggest that they go in the calm down corner for a little bit. And hopefully, because it's an appealing thing, the child will choose to eventually, once you've really set it up, talked about the calm down corner a little bit, they might choose to go to the calm down corner on their own and recognize, like, I need a break. Not always, but that can happen if you set it up as like a really positive thing. And the other thing that I would recommend is maybe finding a feelings chart. There's lots of different feelings charts out there. Do a quick Google search. You'll find a bunch. But that can be helpful too, even if it's just breaking down, the 5 core emotions: anger, sadness, fear, disgust, and joy, to help, have some faces and encourage your sister to be pointing to what she's feeling, and then you guys can maybe talk about it a little bit. So these are all things that, I'm going over them really briefly here just for the sake of time. These are definitely things to look into more, like Google calm down corner, Google feelings chart, and take your time in really introducing these ideas. These are not things that are probably going to work overnight. These are things that need some teaching about what they are before you actually have to implement them in a situation where a child is acting out. Like if you try to introduce these in the moment, it's not going to go over so well because like same as us with being adults, like when we're overwhelmed and when we're dysregulated, that's not the time to introduce a lot of new information. Same thing with kids. Talk about it beforehand. make it really positive, take the shame out of being dysregulated, because we all get dysregulated sometimes. So those are some things that I would suggest. So, yeah. What thoughts do you have?
Well, it's funny, I don't know why, but when we were talking about blowing bubbles earlier, I thought you were talking euphemistically, not literally.
Like literally blowing bubbles, yeah.
Bubbles. Okay. On that realm of breathing stuff, though, when I've tried to help kids with learning how to breathe in a more like meditative or calming kind of fashion, if you're, every kids are different at different ages, so if this seems appropriate to your sister, it totally can work to have them breathe in like they're smelling a flower, which generally means they do a long, slow inhale rather than a snort, right? So breathe in like they're smelling a flower, and then breathe out like they're blowing on hot cocoa, or hot cider or hot whatever they want to drink, right? So again, that makes sure most of the time that they don't just, blow really hard. So you're not blowing like you're blowing out a candle, you're blowing like you're blowing on something hot, right? So you don't want to splash it everywhere by blowing on it. Anyway, so those are some metaphors that I've seen work really well with kids for helping with breathing. But that's just one idea I have. If you want a lot more stuff, first of all, should you just, what did you say? The writer said, like, should I just Google mindfulness for toddlers? Kind of. Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
There are a lot of books, actually, on teaching mindfulness to kids. I, unfortunately, am not familiar enough with any one of them to specifically recommend it, but I know there's a lot out there. And so, yeah, that's the thing. But also, Insight Timer, which is my favorite guided meditation app personally, has a whole subsection that is just guided meditation for kids, specifically geared towards children. So there's a lot of sort of introductory ways to start teaching explicit, mindfulness skills and stuff to kids, and there's a lot of resources out there to help support you in that endeavor. So I think it's a great thing that you want to help her. This is a great time to intervene in that kind of thing and start teaching different ways of being while the brain is still super plastic. So good job you wanting to be a good sister, and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, next one here says, hey all, I'm not completely caught up on the podcast yet, but I love this podcast. Already been so helpful. Thanks. I want to ask about the idea of flow. I have things I enjoy doing, but even those things feel like they take so much work, mental, emotional, physical, etc. Does anyone have any ideas for how I might find ways to get into that flow mindset? How does one find new things to do or find the things that recharge them?
So I kind of see this as a couple of separate questions. With the idea of flow, the first thing that came to mind for me is that I find flow at least in things that, A, take my full attention. Like it has to be something that I need to be paying attention to. And most often with things that also use my body. So skiing, mountain biking, baking, cooking, right? It doesn't have to be, I know the first two, skiing and mountain biking can be kind of exercise, but it doesn't have to be things that are explicitly, get your heart rate pumping, but just stuff that is involving, kind of my whole being. And for me, the more of me that's involved, the more likely I am to find this state of flow. Also, I think it has to be something where I'm not an abject beginner. Like for instance, mountain biking was something I only took up a few years ago, and when I very first started, no flow, zero flow. Ixnay on the O-flay, right? No. Because I was panicking half the time.
Yeah.
and having to think really explicitly, right? Like, so, if you're brand new to something, I think you're unlikely to find a state of flow there. But I think also I don't want anything that I'm good enough to do by rote, right? So I think if I were an expert mountain biker, maybe I wouldn't find it as well. I'm not, so I cannot speak to that yet. But, that sort of growing edge where I'm comfortable enough to not be panicking or having to think really hard about every moment, but I'm still, not so expert that I'm engaged in the process and I am having to pay attention and kind of be present. So those are some of the things that work for me, and maybe for you looking in your own life, listener, you can find things that kind of fit in that niche where it uses a lot of your being, uses a lot of your mind, but where you're not panicking with newness or bored with familiarity.
Yeah.
And then so with the idea of getting into finding things that recharge you, finding things that recharge you, I would say one good way to do is look at old things. Maybe there are things that don't recharge you anymore, but used to. Like, we change and evolve as we grow and, get older as human beings. But looking at things that at least even used to make you feel really charged and rejuvenated can kind of give you a hint as to a direction to start looking in for new things that will also be recharging. You can also go really super basic. Like, do you have an idea that you are an introvert or an extrovert? Because based on that, you might be looking, at least broadly, for activities that are done alone or with other people. All right? Like, so start painting with a big, wide brush and look at past experiences as well to try and find new avenues. I also like to think of it as playing your own sort of internal game of hot and cold. Right? Like, as you're engaging in things, as you're trying new stuff out, as you're having experiences, kind of check in with yourself. Be like, well, I wouldn't call this recharging, but it's less draining than a lot of other things I do. So maybe I'm headed in a, kind of correct-ish direction. And just be willing, I don't know, I'm probably going to say this. I feel like I've thought this about a couple of things that we're going to talk about today. So maybe it's just where my brain is, because I feel like if enough people's things make me think something, it's probably me. Mm-hmm. But for those who need to hear it, you're going to fail and it's okay. So that's also the thing I would say. Like, you're going to try shit out, thinking it's going to recharge you, or thinking maybe you'll find flow. And you're absolutely not. Like, with some percentage of the time, it's going to suck. You're going to feel drained. You're going to have been distracted. Like, right, it's just going to be abject and utter failure. And that is okay. That's okay. That's the process of figuring shit out and being human. So be nice to yourself when, some of your efforts flub. Because that's just to be expected. It's just part of the process of figuring stuff out about yourself. So those are kind of my thoughts. What about you, Michelle?
Yeah, I love everything that you said. So I'll just tack on a couple of things. But yeah, everything you said seemed pretty spot on. And one thing that I notice, at least for myself, plays a role in whether or not I'm able to like find that state of flow or not. Because as you mentioned really nicely, Kate, like no activity is probably going to put us in flow 100% of the time. Like there's so many factors that are at play with whether or not we can find flow with any given thing that we're doing. But, if I have days where my police skills are not up to par, like if I haven't slept very well, if I'm hungry, whatever it is, it's going to be a lot harder for me to get into a state of flow because my body's just having to work harder. Like I'm starting from, like a deficiency or like a few steps back. And so if you are having a day where, overall you're taking care of yourself pretty well and attending to some of those police skills, that may make it more likely, I would say, for you to find flow. Not a guarantee, but more likely. And yeah, I liked what Kate said too about how it's really important to find something that engages in to some degree or another, like your body and your brain. Because like one thing for me that helps me, I tend to find flow in it more often than not, like is doing a puzzle. And a puzzle is not something that's super physical. And yet at the same time, like it still involves my body because I'm having to like, I'm using my hands, you know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be anything too extreme physically, but I think that helps when there's that component there. But yeah, just be curious, play around with different things that you might enjoy. I was thinking back to, this was a while ago, so you might have to like search for it in the Facebook group, but just search like pleasant events and find the pleasant events list that we posted a long time ago. Because if you're like, I don't even know what activities I would enjoy, like I don't even know where to start, the pleasant events list can be a really good opportunity to take a look at that. Find some things that interest you, especially some of those things that, again, might involve using your body as well as your brain. And just try it out. And exactly like you were also saying, Kate, like have a lot of understanding for yourself when you're not able to like find flow. Because it's a hard thing to find sometimes. So.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. On to the next. Let's see. Hi, Kate. I am loving the podcast and finding it super helpful. I'm currently up to the Check the Facts episode. I have a situation that is causing me a lot of emotional turmoil and would really like some advice on using the skills to handle it. Or if there's a skill I haven't gotten to yet that I should jump to. Recently, after a very hard 12 months, I had a quite significant mental breakdown. My best friend at the time chose this moment to decide she no longer had the capacity to deal with me and essentially cut me off completely. She has since said that she wants a fresh start and to rebuild the friendship in a healthier manner. However, any attempts from me to reconnect are rejected. We see each other quite often as our kids do a lot of things together, and she bounces between cold and normal constantly. This is causing me a lot of confusion, hurt, and anger. I don't know how to proceed. I have been using the check the facts not only to try and approach this objectively, but to see her side. Looking at her perspective, she probably thinks the way she is behaving towards me is just her process of renegotiating the friendship, and she wants me to realize it is less about me than her right now. However, even that knowledge doesn't help me not feel hurt when she says she wants a fresh start and then turns around and is rude and cold the following day. I am unsure what to do about it. Do I tell her how it's making me feel? Do I just leave it and hope in time it gets better? How do I use these skills to navigate a complex social problem in which we are probably both right, both wrong, and everything in between without causing either of us more hurt?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought when I read this post in the Facebook group was like, I've been there with a couple of friendships that I could readily call to mind. I was like, oh yeah, I experienced that with this person, with that person. And I mean, the hurt is totally valid, listener. It makes absolute sense that you would feel, like you said, hurt and confused and angry. All makes total sense. And you mentioned that, you are using check the facts in this situation, which is fantastic. And asking yourself that question of like, what do I actually know about what's going on for her in her life? Because even though it sounds like you see her on a pretty regular basis, because your kids do a lot of things together, like that's a snapshot into someone's life. Even if we see someone a couple hours a week, we're still only getting a snapshot. We don't know what's going on for them, late at night or early in the morning, or, there's so much that we can't know about people's day-to-day lives that can be impacting them. And maybe that helps a little bit to remind yourself, like, there may be a lot going on for her that I don't know, that is impacting how she shows up and is interacting with me. And something that doesn't really have to do so much with DBT skills, but it's just something that, again, based off of my own personal experience, I've had a tendency to fall into this place. And it sounds like maybe how you describe things in this post, like you might be falling into it a little bit also, which is just like in my friendships, I tend to hold this mindset of like, I will do whatever it takes to make this friendship work. I don't care if it's not 50-50. I will just be there as much as that person needs me to be. And I don't care if I do more. And to some degree, I think that can be healthy in relationships because lots of times relationships aren't truly 50-50. Maybe it's a little 60-40. 70-30 at times. But I've certainly fallen into it where like I find myself doing like 95% of the work to maintain the friendship and keep it going. And the other person isn't giving nearly as much as I'm trying to give. And I think that if I just give more and more and more, the friendship will work. It will get back on track. And I care enough about this person that it's worth it to me to do the vast majority of the work to maintain a relationship with them. And that leads to resentment. At least for me it has. It leads to feeling a little burnt out. It's tiring. And so I do really think in this situation it is important to like maybe take a step back and try to do a little bit less and see what she does. Especially because she mentioned that she wants to try to rebuild the friendship. Give her a chance to do it and go from there with whether she does or does not, because that will give you a lot of information. And as you start seeing more from her, then it makes sense that, again, like you might start giving a little more again, but it might be helpful to take a break from giving so much time and energy to the friendship. Yeah, nice. Those are my thoughts.
I do want to sort of echo something that you said, Michelle, which is just really to, reemphasize to this listener that your feelings are really valid. Like, you don't necessarily, I don't know, how did you put it? Like you said, nothing that you're realizing helps you not feel, hurt when she says she wants a fresh start and turns around and is rude and cold the following day. Well, I mean, like, of course you're hurt by that. I don't know that there's a way. Maybe there is, but I don't know that there's a way to just be like, well, I have rationalized my way through to the point where I simply don't have feelings about things anymore.
Yeah.
First of all, just validate, right? It's okay to be hurt and angry and scared and upset, because a lot of those would make perfect sense on what's going on. So that's just one kind of thing. I think I've probably said this on here about other things before, but I think it often bears repeating, which is the idea of remember how someone treats you says more about them than it does about you. So I think this actually ties nicely in, Michelle, with your idea about you don't always know what's going on in someone else's life. Like, it's good to try and see her perspective on your friendship and on your guys' interactions, but part of her perspective or part of like what's driving her behaviors almost certainly has nothing to do with you or with your guys' relationship, but has to do with her life as a whole as a context in which that is happening. So, try and remember that her behavior is ultimately on her, and also is an indication of her and not an indication of like who you are as a person, etc. But also that goes for you as well, which means your behaviors and how you choose to be in this situation is about you and not about her. And so I don't know, I really appreciate Michelle's idea of kind of stepping back and letting her show up how and when she is going to / wants to, and kind of meeting her where she is. But at the same time, I don't know, for me, backing off could be the thing, saying more could be the thing. You could definitely be like, hey, I don't know, I don't think our friendship is going to work if I'm not honest with you, and so I just need to know how this is, making me feel. There's a whole range of things, ways that you could behave that I don't believe can be objectively labeled as right or wrong, as long as for you, you are living your own values. I guess that's the thing that I would really want to emphasize, is that however you're moving forward, however you're interacting with her, it feels to you like you are behaving in line with your own morals, values, the person that you want to be as you move through the world. And so I would just suggest doing a really good sort of check-in with yourself. Like, all right, what are my values in situations like this? What is super important to me? Because if your values are that you need to be able to be honest with your friends about how how their behavior impacts you, then you need to do that even if that scares this friend away. Because you won't be building a friendship that you want and is in line with your values and is healthy for you if you act outside of your values in order to build the friendship. So find your values, act in line with them, and things will kind of fall out as they need to, which isn't always the happiest thing, right? Sometimes when we live our values, we find that it means we lose relationships that we really treasured, which is hard. But it is better than not being ourselves in order to try and maintain something that wasn't actually healthy for us. So I guess those are my thoughts. Oh, last but not least, you asked if there's something you can jump to. The answer is there will be once we record it, which we haven't. But there is an interpersonal effectiveness skill called Dear Man, which if you like, you could Google or stay tuned for a while. I don't have any idea.
Yeah, a few more weeks.
A while yet.
At least a month.
We'll get there. So the situation hasn't resolved itself by then. Stay tuned.
Yep.
Because there will be a Dear Man episode.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so someone posted in the Facebook group and they said, I would like to ask, what kind of doubts or concerns did you have about attending a group? I need to make a decision about starting a group training and I completely don't know what I should do.
Let's see. So I am taking from this that the person means a DBT skills group.
Yes.
If not, a lot of what I'm saying may not fit, and I'm sorry. So I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in the first episode, and maybe a couple times since then, but at least the first episode. I went through a DBT group myself when I was 19, as a client, not as a leadership role. And I had a lot of fears, I think, going into it. Amusingly enough, I would say I was about equally frightened of going in and being the quote-unquote most fucked up person in the group, and also going in and being quote-unquote not fucked up enough. I can't tell you, I was pretty much equally afraid of both. I didn't know what to expect from the other participants, and because I'd had a lot of bullying and other stuff happen to me in school, I think I was really nervous about the idea of simply not fitting in, not being accepted, not being similar enough to the other people in the group to feel not alone, right? To not be ostracized or excluded. I will say that it ended up that I was neither the most fucked up nor the least fucked up. I was just differently, quote unquote, fucked up. I was just different, right? But even in those differences, there were enough similarities that I could feel empathy towards and receive empathy from the other group members. And that was really the thing that felt the most important to me, was to be able to feel like I could understand the people around me and they could get and understand me. I will say that as now having been a leader, DBT groups, that it isn't like most other groups. It's not so much the sit in the circle and share your feelings kind of group therapy as it is more like a classroom environment. So if your anxiety is in part around these, sitting around and sharing a bunch of everything with a bunch of strangers, there is less of that than in a lot of other groups. And also, I would highly recommend talking to, if you can, all of the leaders, but at least one of the leaders of the group beforehand, just to get a sense of if you mesh well with them, right? Everybody's human, and there's no guarantee that any two humans will get along. So it's nice to do a little phone interview or meet face-to-face or whatever works for you in this time and day and age and wherever you are on the globe. But to try and see, all right, do I feel safe with this person? Do I feel comfortable with this person? Do I feel welcomed by this person? Because that can give you a big indicator of how you're going to feel in the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And, I think with any group, especially DBT group, because like you said really nicely, Kate, and sometimes we refer to it, I think on accident, as like a class instead of a group, because it really does have a classroom type of feel. That there are people who join group therapy because they're wanting those connections with other people. So whether that's joining a DBT group or other formats of group therapy, that's why they're there, is because it's a group. And maybe they're a little more extroverted or whatever it is, but they really want those social connections. And then there's lots of people who join groups because, especially DBT, because they want to learn the skills and have that be separate maybe from their individual therapy. Like they want individual therapy, if they're in it, to be this time where they can share really openly about what's going on with them. And then when they in a DBT group, they don't want like their individual therapy to feel like a class, essentially, more or less. And so people join groups for all different kinds of reasons. I mean, we have had groups where people have become really good friends afterwards, and they socialize on break, and they socialize after group. We've had that. And we've had groups where literally by the end of group, like, people are still struggling to know other people's names, and they've all just kind of kept to themselves the whole time. And whatever your reasons are for joining a group, I think I say all that to recognize that there will likely be other people in your group that you join who are also maybe there for the reasons that you are. Like whether your reasons for joining are to try to connect with other people, or whether your reasons for joining are to like put your head down and learn the skills and kind of like be a good student. You'll probably find other people who are in either of those boats with you. And Kate already mentioned this, but it's worth emphasizing again. If you have concerns before the group begins, talk to the facilitators. If you have concerns during the group, talk to the facilitators. Tell them what your concerns are, whether that's concerns about other participants, concerns that you're not learning what you thought you wanted to learn. Like we had someone in our most recent DBT group reach out to us about halfway through, and she just had certain questions that we hadn't addressed yet. And she was like, are you guys going to talk about this stuff in the group? And because of how structured DBT group is, we're like, ooh, well, those specific questions don't really fit into like the skills that we're teaching right now, but we still did our best to answer her questions to make sure that she felt like she was getting what she wanted out of the group. And if she had never come to us and said, hey, I'm wanting these particular things and I don't feel like I'm getting them yet, we would have never known. So talk about any and all concerns with the group facilitators before and during a group if you do decide to join. But I don't know, group experiences can be awesome. I've enjoyed all my group therapy experiences, but they're all different and they're all unique. So, yeah. Cool. All right. Next one, Kate. I think it's the last one.
I think so. Yeah. So, let's see. Hi, everyone. I need some advice for managing black and white thinking/splitting. I just can't control this no matter how hard I try when I am distressed. I put in half of my energy in managing my sudden outburst of disproportionate anger during any distressing situation, but I can't help my black and white thinking. I am spoiling my good relationships with some of my loved ones just because I can't think in that quote-unquote gray zone. As much as it hurts the person, it causes me to panic as well, especially when the person is trying to retaliate or tell me why I'm not thinking right, which all boils down to more panic and then the urge to self-harm. Although I try and control so that I don't reach this state, I really need advice to combat my black and white thinking. It's frustrating to know what's wrong, but be unable to fix it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think this is a thing that a lot of people can struggle with. And basically in terms of DBT skills that I would recommend, because, yeah, when anger is present, all kinds of rational thinking can immediately go out the door. The anger can just take over, and getting into that gray zone is going to be much more challenging if you're angry about something. So yeah, the first thing probably is to get that anger managed, lessened, lowered in some way. And probably the best skills to do that are to do stop or tip. Both of those really help with taking a step back and trying to get your prefrontal cortex back online so that your emotions aren't taking over. Now, this might feel a little weird if you're in the middle of interacting with someone. And that's where it sounds like for you, listener, that you're really struggling is, in interaction, someone tells you something that, someone says that you're not thinking about something correctly. That gets you really upset. It can lead to self-harm urges and other things. So, before going any further, if you're able to tell that person, right, like if you're able to catch it, right, and this is exactly how stop works, catch it and to basically ask for a break, like to step away from the situation before you come back and try to keep talking about it. Hopefully, the person you're interacting with will be understanding of that. And then you can take a minute to go calm yourself down, whether that is splashing cold water on your face or whatever else it may be, before you come back to the conversation. And also in interactions, with other people, and this is really where the dialectical idea comes into play, is figuring out where the middle ground is between the two of you. Chances are some of what they're saying is right. Some of what you're saying is right. Some of what they're saying is wrong. Some of what you're saying is wrong. And it's just maybe trying to figure out, where do we agree? Even if we only agree on a sliver of something, or where can I see this other person's perspective? Even if I disagree with 95% of what they're saying, what's the 5% that I can maybe be like, okay, I can see where you're coming from on that. And seeing if you can find that. But again, it's going to be really hard to find that if anger is really present and really high for you. So try to lower the anger first by using some stop or some tip stuff, and then see if you can return to the conversation and try to find some middle ground. And if you can't, that's okay. But hopefully you're able to maybe continue in the discussion feeling a little more even keeled than you were before. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Nice. All right. Are we all buckled in? It's time for a mini Kate rant.
Do it, Kate. Do it.
Kate rant time. Okay, so I'm sure I have ranted plenty over the past number of episodes, because I can't keep track. But against the word should or shouldn't, today is my rant against can't. I always say that should and can't are the only two dirty words in my office when I'm seeing my individual clients. Unless you are talking about breaking the laws of physics, can't just doesn't have much of a place, in my opinion. Because once you have said can't, well, why would you try? Why would you try and do something you literally can't do? Most of the time, that would just be considered a little bit dumb, right? We don't try and do the things we can't do because we can't do them, and that's a bunch of wasted effort, right? So, listener, not trying to say you are not trying. I believe you absolutely that you are trying to do this thing. I'm also saying by using the word can't, I just can't control this, I can't think in that gray zone, I am unable to fix this, you are sabotaging your own efforts. Because, we cannot. Haha, there you go. I love it. I like when I use should when ranting against should too. It's my favorite part.
It's so easy to do. I've done it many times.
So many. It's really difficult to put in our full effort to something that we have already decided we can't do. So watch how you're talking to yourself about it, right? If you fuck up, if you fail, if you don't do it in some instance where you're trying, to then follow that up with thinking, I just can't do this. I can't get the hang of it. I can't figure this out, right? Like, you're sabotaging future efforts, and you're just making yourself feel bad. And when we are bullied, whether that bullying is coming from internal or external sources, we also don't have as much mental and emotional resilience or mental and emotional resources with which to tackle anything that we're trying to do, right? So if you're going into something and you're really making an effort and you fail at doing the thing and you're like, I can't do this, I'm just stupid, I can't figure it out, blah, 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 you're going to have less of an opportunity, or not less of an opportunity, less of an ability to tackle that same thing moving forward, because you're already going to have feelings of shame and feelings of can'tness. What is the right word for that? Inability, I guess.
Being defeated. Yeah, that's not a feeling word, but like
I know.
that sense of being defeated.
Yes, right before you even try, right, and that's going to make it awful hard to put in more effort. So I love everything Michelle was saying. Stop and tip are great for helping to calm your limbic system and bring your prefrontal cortex more online. But just, right, be okay with failure and try and stop using the word can't. And, I almost forgot. Practice this when you're not in a heightened emotional state, right? This would be an awesome mindfulness exercise. Going through your world and trying to just find gray in news clippings, news articles or situations, things that don't impact you personally. Find gray in movie plots, or book plots. Look for the ambiguity that's available there, right? Like, just practice that way of viewing things when you are not upset and when it doesn't impact you. And that is another way to start training your brain to be able to do that. We all are prone to black and white thinking to one extent or another. Some people struggle with it more than others. But even, I don't know, my favorite thing is that I'll say, is it this or that? And then I'll have to catch myself afterwards and be like, or both, or another thing that I hadn't thought of, or, right? Like, humans love dichotomies, right? With this or that. Figure it out, right? Like, this is very simplistic, and we love it. It makes our brains so happy. And it's rarely accurate.
Yep.
So trying to remember that anytime if you say it's this or that, you might already be wrong. But yeah, I don't know. I guess those are my things. Be nice to you. Work on eliminating can't as much as possible, and practice that way of thinking.
Yeah.
When it doesn't impact you, and realize you're going to fail, and that's okay.
Yep. All good stuff. Cool. All right, so keep all of this coming to us. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of these we pulled from our Facebook group today because we thought that sharing these listeners' stories, even if we've already responded to them, and even if they're going to listen to this and be like, that's what you said in your Facebook response to me, that these are universal things. Like we were just acknowledging, lots of people struggle with black and white thinking. Lots of people struggle with, do I want to join a DBT group or do I not? Lots of people struggle with friendships. These are things that can be shared that may help lots of people in making choices and decisions that could be helpful. So email us, dbtmepodcast@gmail.com. And also, if you post in the Facebook group, it may end up in a Q&A episode. So we'll see you guys next time. Bye. To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile